Okay, so we're going to start sich on the Sikha Tazriya Achedish Chelik mit Zayin. So, some of the easiest way to do it is mit Masakim Zayin. Just Garba Kitzer, then start sich on Etel Chanukudus, and then try and make a Seder in was tut sich. So, the Nukude, that says the Gufa Sikha, is Azeh. As bei even Kloli se da zwei Anhagis. Das two Anhagis von der Eberste Anhage Nisses Anhage Tivis. Und dieselbe Sache ist in der Wege. Now, in jeder eine von sie, sein Anhage Nisses und sein Anhage Tivis, ist eiche da der Zweite. Why? So the Lashon is, weil it's in Siv Zayin, das, was Nes und Teva sind in zwei besondere Anhagis, ist nur mit Zad Eres wie Gilui. Verstellen sich es in zwei K. But, mit Zad Yicheles Atzmus, aber seinen Blick wohl und Gewul einig. Der Eisdruck von Schleimusse. Und kemaimer Yedua im Temer, sheyesh lekech Blick wohl, wenn lekech Begwul, hat machas Schleimusse. Und bei Pnimis, der Pnimis ist in Musger, der Eisdruck von Yecholti Yisbarach. So, because mitzad ha-shleimus and bepnimis mitzad ha-yecheles is the two kavim are not two separate things. Memele haben wir beide Sachen. Der Fall darf man gefunden, sei in Teva Dingen von Nes und sei in Nes Dingen von Teva. Teaches us, where do you see in the Indian of Nes, Entschuldigung, in the Indian of Teva, the Indian of Nes, the Indian von Chazakim Kemi Bara. So you see the Indian of Bligvul in the Welt of Teva. Where do you see in Nes the Indian of Teva? Zet men as Nisim Amulubashim B'Teva. Now, in each of these things is da a Pesach Sofa in the arts. So when again, das was se echt da the Indian von Bligvul von Nes in Teva, the Indian von Chazakim Kimi Bara. Is men meisi von der Aare 43 in der Aare 43 as amitis sheirish anitzche benivroim hurak metzmus izvach. So even though bepashtus, this is kilo the Indian of Blikvul, or like we would usually call Seviv, wie das gefindt sich in Teva, in Gvul, aber amitis Indian nimmt sich von metzmus izvach. Shalom mikol Indian shaler v'gilu. Yes, this must be Pashat Cheshbon, because the Indian of Leishanisi, Alibe de Emes, the Musik of Leishanisi can not sein in Atzmus. Because is the fact that happened itself is a Shini. As nicht more, so the Emes and Musik of Leishanisi muss sein in von Atzmus. In other places, in Tavshim Hey, so that this word the Rebbe has a lot. So the Rebbe says a little bit different, that in every Indian of muss sein a gewisse Ziel. So a Meile das nicht stande von der zweite Sache. So Al-Koponim in is nicht, it is not shaykhs to talk no shinui. The only place where there's really no shinui is in Atzmus. Und Meile kommt es, als der Chazak und Kemiborim nennt sich von Atzmus. Und again die zweite Sache, Teva shebenes, the fact that Nisim Amulubashim beteva, sagt man noch ein Wort. That Alibe Demes, it's not only in Nisim, which are Malubashim B'Teva, it's also in the Indian of Nisim, which are Lamaylu Teva. Because the very fact that it's happening in Teva means that Teva has allowed him to come in. It does macht a harome in Teva. Noch mehr. It's Meisif in order, this is in order 55. Yeshleimah, as das was a Nes is meir in Elam v'Teva is nicht nor the Pshat, because Nes is so Bligvul, so he could reach anywhere, including Teva. Nor because the Indian of Nes hatten sich eiche the Indian von Gvul, hatten sich eiche the Indian von Teva. One of them is a Mitzayin to the Maimer to Hemshech Ein Beis, and this is Shavuos Toshin Dalet. Over there's a whole arichis how in the Indian of Gilui is echt dort in von Zimt. Maybe we'll come to it. It does is bekitz and nimrit the cheshbon from the Sikh. I verstehe that everyone learned it, so I'm not being meidig too much in the prat. So, Pashat sich ein bisschen reinzulassen in the Havonas Advarim, so lassen wir sich stellen, Pashat auf etliche Nekudis, saying these are not like major kashas, just like lechade des Amachshove, to help machen da Klarkeit, to come to explain what's these two Eifanim, Hayav Teva Shebenes and Nes Shebeteva, and then to see the different pratim, how the Rebbe sets up. So the first obvious question is, Pashat, wie man angefangen Ziv sein? It's etwas als geknippt und geflochten. He's going back and forth. Why is there in Teva Nes? Why is there in Nes Teva? Hebt on mitzad Yechelas Atzmus. So it has to be one in. Then he says it's mitzad Shlemusei. Und bepnimi is the Eisruk von Yecholti Yisbach. So obviously, it's clear medav da onkommen to the inyan from Yechelis for this word that we're saying over here. He's not being mistapik with the inyan from Shlemus. So erstens favos. If it's true that there's a skalolus mitzad Shlemus, is favos da man onkommen in Yechelis. On leidoch, if the word is Yechelis, so go straight there. Just say mitzad the inyan from Kel Yochel, mitzad Yechelis ha'atzmus, hat men beide Sachen. We are somehow working within, because it's also shleimus. So it's going back and forth. The shaila is pashat, was sagt man da? It's clear also that the maskone, wie sagt in Sifches, the lashon is, as even though these are two kavim hafrim, seinen ze bepnimius meyuched. Again, we're going back to the pnimius. So the pnimius heißt, dass der selbe pnimius, was man gerät früher von Yecheles, als mitzad der Yecheles of the meyuched, not mitzad shlemus. Noch a poshete kashe, ich kein kashe, just the poshete was retten da. We're saying that mitzad ha'atzmus is beide Sachen sind da. So the two things are not still. Say bazei is favos lapayil when you talk teva shebenes, the nes is beis gabrus, and when you talk nes shebeteva, the teva is beis gabrus. It seems that we're not talking over here about the mitzad Yechelas ha'atzmus that we sagt in our 44 is mitzad nina and ninois. The two things are not still. They are somehow a still. So if it wouldn't be a still, then you shouldn't have to have that you have one more than the other. Should be, I'm sorry, when you have one thing more than the other, the taichi is that something gave in. Something gave way. And we managed to reinzuquetschen in the zweite. If it's true, as mitzad Yechelas ha'atzmus is beide, so sag beide. Apparently we're not talking over here mitzad Yechelas ha'atzmus. So tzirik. So wie arbeitet das? It's the Lam again in Ha'ara 43. Say this word that amitis sheirish hanitzchis from the Nevroim is rak me'atzmusi yizbarich, because only there you have the emes musik of the shanis. So l'cheire, nicht l'cheire, but pashtus. This inyan is a hisof from what we're talking till now. It's busy jetzt hat man gerät, nicht mit Zadatzus. It's a sagt man, aber it's benezer to the fact that the pashtus, you have the inyan of Nitzchis in the Nivroim, in Teva, hast du da etwas inyan von der Chibur Hofchim, und das ist mit Zadnin an ihm Neues, das ist mit Zadatzmus, benezer man sehr, sollst du wissen, dass es auch Lishanissi which is mit Zadatzmus. So, the pashtus. We were talking about Atzmus till now. Das ist eine neue Sache. Noch mehr, wir wollen mamisch sharpen the inyanim. Harei afilu after we're talking as mitzad the Leisha Nisi, das is etwas noch ein Inyan in Atzmus, which we're gaining more than when we're talking about standard regular Chibur Avchim, of Nes Sheveteva and Teva Shevenes. Afilu lachre the Leisha Nisi, it's still not Mamish Atzmus. V'haraya, ich mein, meret, das ist doch die Chiddush von Yemez Mashiach. The Chiddush, I mean, Tavshel Lamed Ches, überall, ich mein, dem ist, that's the Arenu Niflois, that you're gonna have Beidem Eilis Mokem Echad without any Vitter, sign mitzad together of the thing. So kommt das Kilo nehmen, wir sagen da drei Sachen about that Atzmus gibt uns the Chibur Havchin und Atzmus geht uns geben der Ingen von Leisha Nisi und Atzmus geht uns geben Taki Gili Atzmus, das Arenu Niflois in Yemez Mashiach. So, obviously, man darf da machen, das ist not Pilpulin, this is Pshat. What's the difference between these three things? Danach ist der Apostel Klatzkasche. Man sagt da, als von wo nimmt sich der Leisha Nisi, das nimmt sich von Atzmus. That's where Chazak Kim Baram comes from. This is hepech from what it says everywhere. If you learn Hachetish Samachov, von wo nimmt sich die Linie von Chazak Kim Baram? Because it's a Kav, and the Kav is, because it's Chazav Heir, hat in sich eigen die Linie von Blikvul. So therefore, even though it's in Welt, which the Kav, this is the Indian von Erakvul, bei von Klali, im Kolze, somehow we smuggle in the Indian of Blikvul, the Indian of Chazak Kim Baram in the Teva. So that's like the normal sprach. Sagt man dann, no, that's not true. A liebe demes, amitis sheresh anitzches shebenivroim, is nicht von dem. So weiter. Obviously, they're both true. It says, where does Chazachim Kimi Baram come from? Das nimmt sich von Erakav. That's the Pashtus. Da legt da der Rebbe zu noch ein Wort, das amitis sheresh hanitzchius. Das heißt, that we're not talking over here where it comes from. We're talking, it's sheresh. Epsamit is sheresh, just as shena zweite Sach. And that actually comes from relations. Is that when this needs Hagdara, how these two things working together? Then there's another passion to think. It's again, mesuchen is da like to passion liberal. This is passion to uptouchen what's happening over here. We're saying over here that this is das was Leisha Nisi. That's the union of Nitzchis in the Nivroim, das nimmt sich von Atzmus. Seiba sei, hab ich da mamisch Gili Atzmus. Das was so morgen in Nechem Yid zet that it's Chazachim Kimi Baram, so the gar nicht gebeten, so the Gili of the Leisha Nisi. Aber im Kol Zed, this is not a Nes. The Pashtus. This is all what we call the Nes Shebeteva. Aber a Nes it doesn't. Why? What mile is in a Nes over this? So there's common Lashenis. Whenever the Rebbe moves from this word of the Nitzchius in the Nivroim to talking about the Nes, so there's always but sof epis the Nes. There's a in Tovshin Memhei, the Rebbe said the epis haloshin as once it Sefort, it's working within the Gedorim of Teva. Because what says it's working within the Gedorim of Teva? So it touches because nor a Nes weist a balabatischkeit of Teva. Chazachim Kimi Baram is working within the boundaries of Teva. L'chora nicht. The pashtus, yeah? Without getting too complicated, but alle wissen, stam Chaysorach Elekem, so this play says beferish, the fact that this Chazachim Kimi Baram, das ist mit Sagili Aseviv, it's nothing to do with the Gedorim of Teva. It's Lamreis Teva. So somehow or another, this is not good enough. It's not as good as a nes. Was ist der Pshat? Sometimes the Lashon, I think the Toshal Amadalov, there was a Lashon, as Epsa Yeride Meir Panav Yisbarach. I feel Chach as is in of Bligvul, but it's fart working within Teva. It's the same Teichen, the Lashon Nachir. It's a fart Epsa Yeride. So the Shaila is, what does that mean? In other words, what's the chisaron in the Vart of Ara 43, which there's still going to be a mile in Nes? How complicated to make things. We're confined in time. But let's just one more word. Right at the end of Hara 55, das man früher ausgerät, is mitzayin to lahoyer mi mamori chag hashvuos ein heit to the ein beis and shvuos tavshin dalet. This word as in the bligvul is dogvul. But I mean, on King Kashas, was will man da sagen? What's the hisof of what we were looking to gain with this yeshleimar as in the bligvul zech da dingen von gvul? Is lama oneben just with one a kurze hakdame, just to be magdir that we tack on the same page, that we know we handle the selbe zach, and then we'll try and make a bisla seder in the pshat down this. Let's start from Gar Nidrik. Bepashtus in Welt, if you say Teva and Nes, yeah, like the Rebbe brings the Chacham Tzvi, there's no difference. Teva is Nisim Tchuf, meaning it's a misunderstanding. Se kommt kilo von a Chalishes in der Munne in der Eibishter, the fact that you nispol more from Nes than from Teva. Both of them the Eibishter makes. Alamai, what's the difference if the Eibishter makes that water should flow for 2 days, on the third day the Eibishter makes it stand? So he could have done this, he could have done that. Both of them is the Eibishter making. Und das ist bepashtus the Pirush Hamilis von Misha Emer lechemitz v'yad Shemen v'yadlik Emer lechemitz v'yadlik. It's a selbe Sache. Kommt Chassidus and argues strongly as a nishta. Teva and Nes are two different inyonim alibedemis. What says? The difference between Nes and Teva is not just the way I see it. Alibedemis. This over here we're talking about the Eira Liki, which is Misyachis Tuvelt. And over here we're talking about the Eira Liki versus Hecher von Welt. What says? Even Kloli in Shemes it's Havaya and Alikim, or there in Chassidus sprach das ist Sefer von Mamal. He says there's a chelik kavyochel of the Eibishter, which in Yoni is that he's working with the Metzias of Welt, and then there is Vier Kumt Aretz Alim, Bepashtus. What's the difference between these two? So obviously, it's just a pashat of Bavaranish. Seviv is not just the taich that it's more than the Gedarim of Welt. Seviv is the taich that is bad and believable. Yeah? This is a taich, is Lamoshel, if a Rav gives a Talmud too much seichel, so that does his chain makif. I'm confused, but it's a pnimi. Vahar I zweite Talmud in sehr verstehen. We're talking about that the Eir is andere Eir. So it's two different yachesen from the Eibishter to the Welt. Nochmer, it's not just that it's two different relationships, it's two names in the Eibishter. If there wouldn't be a Welt, there would still be these two in Yon. Livni atzimtzum mit dort zwei Sachen. Lamai ladin ketzel lamata den tachlis, ich halte lahar, ich halte shlei lahar, wie me wird reden, the Lashon, but there's two in Yonim, alibe demes and alakus, blig vul and gvul. And these are alibe demes zwei Sachen. The fact, when the Eibishter is making Teva, the Taich making Teva is working within the Gedarim of Teva. kommt es, that the Eibishter is now being Messiaches, not here, it's only a certain Yachas from the Eibishter. He's being Megal a certain part of him. Und der Fall. But what's a Pashta Taich Teva? It's just now in the jetzt gedruckt, the Tzadi Gimel. It's in the Satel Recha, this shtickle also. What's the Taich Teva? Teva is the union of Tmidius, consistency. Anything that you see which is the same, which didn't change, is Teva. It says, Lamoshel, it's state the Rabbi Yosef in Loshen Chazal is called Arbot Tivi. What says Tivi? Why is it? Because it doesn't change. Because offer is offer and ish is ish. Why is that the gather of Teva in unsere Sprach? Because if the Yachas of the Eibishter to something is behemshich to the way it was yesterday, is the Taichi is that the Eibishter is recognizing its Metzias. Why do you have to make offer today the same way it was yesterday? So mitzad the Beir is doch nicht mugbel. Elamai, he's working within the Gidrei HaMakab. So the consistency of Teva, das was is betmidius, that's what the fifth Rebbe is magnet. Das is a Taich Teva, bringt da raus, as the Eibishter arbeit mit dem. Noch a prat in Teva is that it's behelem. What's the Taich? As he's misalim in order to give an esimis mokim for the thing. So the Taich Teva means that wie der Eibishter is Messiach zu der Sach, das heißt, es Eira Gvul in Alukus. Was ist der Taich? Nes. It's nicht nur the Taich is that the Eibishter was now megala something more than the Welt. So it's nicht the Taich, Lamoshel, if the Eir, the Chayes of a Medaber would go into a cat, so suddenly I would say that's a Nes, because it was too much. That's not a Nes. That would make a mess in Seder Shtalshus, but it's not Nes. And Nes is nicht the Taichi, is that there's more than the Makabel could take. That would be like saying if a Talmud received too much air, so now there was air makif. It's nicht makif. Das heißt nicht makif. And Nes is the Taich as Agili as-Seviv. Sagili from the Eibishter allein. And so this chiluk that we're making between Nes and Teva, between Seviv and Memale, sharpens both in Yonah. Says the Taich Teva is as a chiluk in the Eibishter was says Teva, Memele it's helped in Achtas Hashem. If we understand is that the Chayis Alekiva Sedo in Teva, das is Azach was living at Tzimtzum. It's not B'diavad, it's not a diluted part of the Eibishter, das is the Eibishter allein. Und eich das was the Sedo the Blikvul in Teva, the Blikvul which comes down the Nes, it's the Blikvul allein. These are both in Yonim which are kind of living at Tzimtzum. And this is just Goren Kurzen, just to sharpen what we're discussing over here. Whenever we discuss that there's going to be a chibur of Nes and Teva, we're discussing a chibur of two tnuis, amitiyis, bli gvul and gvul, wie sie sein in Lamai. And this is where our sikha begins. That we're going to make up some kind of chibur or a skalus between two tnuis which are be'etzem hafchi. Maybe lam das nor iberkai machen sicher. If I would say that the difference between Nes and Teva is circumstantial, is because of the Metzias of Welt, so what's the greatest chiddush as they treffen sich? Obviously, come on, the whole thing is because of the Keli, Ali B'Demes, it's the same thing. Aber wie bald das doch the wenn tu tnuas hofchi is Ali B'Demes, nothing to do with Welt. So we're saying that there's a chibur between Seviv Memale and Nochechen, between Yecholti Lahar and Yecholti Shlei Lahar and Lifnei Atzintz. Or let's use the words between Lamayla and Niketz and Lamata Dintach. There's Bligvul and Gvul in Alakus. So the shaila is, how does this yichud happen? With the results being unsere cheshbon Teva shebenes and Nes shebetach. Is in our sikha there's two efanim. There's mitzad shleimus and there's mitzad yechedus. So obviously what's going to have to be necessary over here is first to be Magdir Pasha, the chiluk between these two things, and then to come back to see the difference between how they work in the Iskalus. What's the difference in the Iskalus mitzad Shleimus and Iskalus mitzad Yechelis? And then we're going to have to figure out in every prat in the Sikha, wegen welche redt men da. And why this whole Sikha is going to be geboit on both of them together. So just to make sure that we halt noch mit, terwijl we haven't begun. All that happened is we asked a few confusing questions and a divrei akdame as meredo wegen bligvul and gvul beetzen. Any questions? Pirches? No, all at once? Okay. Islam on even bepashtus. What's the taich that you say that this shleimus? Meiche teise, as in der Eibishter ist da zwei Sachen. Es ist da Chesed und es ist da Gevur. Der Eibishter ist Poshet Betachlis. Was fällt ihm aus? So we say a cheshbon as Kshem sheyesh lecheles bilti bal gvul kach yesh lecheles bigvul sheim le'at mechas shleimus. Mitzad shleimus you have to say he has both. Lass mir das reden ein bisschen mehr behaftschatte. Ich meine, der Eibishter ist doch Poshet. So why does he have to have any tziyur? So this is what's called sometimes the Terim Shlilim of the Rambam, as if you're going to say he doesn't have something, then you're being Magdal. So I'm not really saying that he has this or he has that. What I'm saying is that ich kann nicht sagen, dass hat es nicht. I mean, Chassidus nimmt es noch mehr, that we even say Terim Chiyuvim. But what we're saying is that I can't say that he doesn't have this thing. Because it would be Akbal. It's wie is Eifen HaMetzias from this thing, which we're saying that the Eibishter also possesses. What does it look like? Obviously, it's not a taich that the Eibishter has also a inyan of Chesed or inyan of Gvur. The Eibishter is a Sholem. Mitzad HaShleimus hat alt. But there's not going to be a real difference between the Chesed and the Gvur. Because both of them, it's really just an expression of Shleimus. Dort kommt der bewusste Wort. Der Rabbi Nachman always chazes von der Rabbi, from Meshi Gorari bis Rameh Simche, was hat gehört von Chatsche, oder von Rameh Simche, was es kommt von noch Hecher or something like that. As
okay.
Shem sheyesh le'yecheles of bilti balgvul, kach yesh le'yechol to be gvul is nicht the taich, ados ha'araye nos ha'hagdor. What does that mean? We're not trying to prove that the Eibishter has Gvul. We're trying to describe the Eifen HaMetzias HaGvul. It's nicht the taich the Eibishter hat in sich Eichet Gvul. The Eibishter is bli Gvul. Hat Eichet Gvul. Wie zei zet is the Gvul? Sheim le'at mechas shleimus. Als prat in shleimus. Mele, the Gvul is going to be was herzachon. If I'm going to hold on to the gvul, the only thing I'm going to see over here is an expression of shleimus. Ulefize. Gvul or bligvul, or if we're talking chesed, gvura, or the other zach was da in the Eibishter is be'etzem all expressions of one word. So because we've described the Eifen HaMetzias of gvul. Kommt es lemaskone. As beetzem bleibt der Eibishter bepschittes. So mitzad shleimusei hat alt. Das is alt, wenn wir retten shleimus. Then there's another word called yichelis. This is skarbavi. This is bavust inyanim. I'm not. If anyone's expecting any like chiddush, this is not. We're just like going through the inyanim vi meret b'derech klal. This is like classic. Yeah. What's Yechelis? Yechelis is coming from a totally different vantage point. I'm starting from somewhere else. Yechel is the Taich Hazeh. Weil is Mechuyev HaMetzias. So Mechuyev HaMetzias muss sein Akel Yoch. So Aloshan in Tavshin Gimel brings from Reb Nissim Goy as it must be that something which is a Chai has to also be a Yochel. And the Chai Be'etzim, that says the Mechuyev HaMetzias, he has to also be a Yochel.
Why?
Why? Oh. So for this, let's just pause for a second. A bissel besser oiskayin, was the Taich Mechuyev HaMetzias, and then we'll understand why the gather of the Mechuyev HaMetzias is machriach that is also a Yoch. The Hagdorah v'imeret Mechuyev HaMetzias in Chassidus, we say commonly expressions of it, is dass es nicht Kodmei HaHeder. Or wie the Lashon is, Ein lo tchil. He doesn't have a beginning. Kodmei HaHeder would mean that he has a Psasibah Lahayese. He doesn't have a tchila. He never wasn't. That's the Hagdorah. L'payil. There's a lot of differences. So let's just pick a few just for clarity. In Metzias Nimtza, Weisman, Asedo, Etlach Hazachim. The first thing in Metzias Nimtza, every Metzias Nimtza is, as I can nicht sein. Efsher lahav sider. A table he is, but he could also not be. And al derech zeh everything. Even if b'poil you can't, theoretically you could imagine a world without it. So in Ingeret it could not be. Noch a prat in Metzias Nimtza is that he needs that another should let him in. The table can't exist if the floor is not going to carry him. Some space is going to have to let you in. Or the concept of tish doesn't exist if there's no need for it. So every inyan that exists is because there was a necessity. So there's something which allows for it. He's totally an atzveiter. So he could not be, and he's totally an atzveiter. Und a dritte Lashon, was steht, is, as in was besteht sein Metzias, the fact that he is mizbatet, the fact that he expresses himself.
Does that mean he's only there because he's needed? What does that mean? He's only there because he's serving a person. And why are you at table? Because I need a service to put things on. I need that. So that's the gedank of table. If nobody would have any such a thing, then there's no teichen to table. You'd just be a slab of wood.
Right? So everything is because you are, because that's the way the world is built. Everything is because of something else. So every mitzvah is nimtza, or even technically, you need that something's holding him up. Mechuyev HaMetzias has all these things he doesn't have. Mechuyev HaMetzias taiches ich darf keinen nicht haben. Or let's start with the first one. It's impossible that I shouldn't be. Ich darf keinen nicht haben. Nobody's helping me be. And his mitzvah is not totally on the fact that he expresses himself. Nicht das ist. All these things, these three things, is all meyusad on one word. As a nicht Kodmei HaHeder. Kodmei HaHeder means, let's just be magdir with the word Kodmei HaHeder. Kodmei HaHeder means that be'etzim you're not supposed to be. So, you're based auf nicht sein. That's where we begin. So obviously you could be mafsid you. He himself doesn't even tiny that he's always supposed to be. There was even a time when he wasn't. So of course it's theoretically possible that he could become mois. So the Kodmei HaHeder is the yesod of Efshel Afsid. Al derech zeh, das was me sagt, that he needs somebody else to make him. What does it he needs someone else? You need a reason why you exist. Because you be'etzim you don't exist. The Kodmei HaHeder is not history. Even now, be'etzim you are zach which Kodmei HaHeder. You're not supposed to be. And you constantly have to be telling me, in what way do you exist? Because there's a sibah. How did that come to be? Because of this. Und der Fahr, his Hagdorah is his expression. Because he's constantly fighting to exist. Mechuyev HaMetzias just is. Oizdrikin is the taich is that the more gili you are, the more you're telling what you are, midem bistu. Mechuyev HaMetzias just is. Now, this word of Mechuyev HaMetzias, this is bakante Sache. The word of Mechuyev HaMetzias is that it's be'etzem faram, it's not called me'ahed. Avdem sagt me, if I understand properly the inyan of Mechuyev HaMetzias, I'm going to have to say that is a kol yachad. Yeah. There's a I have time to read the ganze shtickle. Mishu chaye lami shlei yitamu shneisav I efshe shlei yiyach. So the Yecheles Ha'atzmus is muchrich from our understanding of Mechuyev HaMetzias.
Muchrich from the fact that nothing could be mechazer him.
Yeah, but so what's the cheshbon? So this is. Let me machen the cheshbon a bissel besignen nach. So you do have the Lashon Rambam as kulam tzrichim leiv when it tzarich lechad meh. That's a description of Mechuyev HaMetzias. So, fragt sich the Pashte Kashe, who in it tzarich lechad mehem? Obviously. If not, then it wouldn't be Mechuyev HaMetzias. Es tali af hatzvei. But why do you have to have kulam tzrichim leiv? What's wrong with saying, I'm a atzmi, I am, how do you exist? Ach, weiß nicht. Someone else made you, I have no idea. Lass me das fragen, besignen nachher. Could you have two Mechuyev HaMetzias?
No.
I'm atzmi, there's no reason for me to be. And is Metzius Matzmusi. Besignen nachher, why is Parei, was sagt, Ani asisi es atzmi, such a stira to the Eibishter, as you're being ma'arer on the mitzvahs of the Eibishter. It's like, that's Yichudei Eloah, as the Eibishter is Metzius from the ganze Welt, verstehe. Aber in the Pashtus, the Eibishter is atzmi, but, and okay, so da, Gesundheit, what's a stira? So what's the Havana? You can't say that there's something which is not totally on the Eibishter because the Eibishter is not Mechuyev HaMetzias. What's the touch Mechuyev HaMetzias? Mechuyev HaMetzias means that it's impossible for me not to be. If there's going to be a certain space in the world, a certain inyan, that over there darf nicht haben the Eibishter, say Bazei, it's possible for him not to be. Where? There. A pare also is atzmei. So the Eibishter is Metzias Nimtzah. Because a Bazei is nicht Mechuyev. Was sagst du? Sie können sagen, du bist nicht da. Ich will sagen, du bist nicht da. Da bist du nicht. So you have to say, again, when nicht da Yichudei Eloah, the Metzias from Welt is Alakus. You have to say as the Welt is totally on the Eibishter because it's Mechuyev HaMetzias. Because as soon as there's going to be a place which is independent on him, that the place where the Eibishter is for a reason. So that's already Metzias Nimtzah. Cheshbon klept. This is an important word.
And the right, there's no reason for him not to be there too?
Well, there's no reason. If it's possible for to be a space where I'm not needed, Hestes, there's a space which is saying that I'm not muchrich. I'm not muchrich. So, in other words, where I am, it's because of a reason, obviously. Because over there, you didn't.
Which means there's a kaidam which is dictating where I should or shouldn't be.
Yeah. So, let's just make it clear. It's impossible there should be two Mechuyev HaMetzias. Because Mechuyev HaMetzias means that everything's dependent on him. This is a very important word. Wenn man kann das verschärfen, if necessary. This is going to be the taich why Mechuyev Metzias has to be Yochel. When I say as Atzmus must be Kil Yochel, the Havana is Pashut. Because if there's going to be something that I can't do, haste us that there's a certain space or there's a certain inyan which is not coming from me. That's ma'arer on me being mechuyev. Because I have to be the azah sort zach that there's nothing that it's impossible for me to not to be, and there can't be any inyan or any art where I don't exist. So this is the taich. Kulam tzirichem leiv huein etzorich lechad mehem. Why you have to have the word of kulam tzirichem leiv, and that's the word why it has to be yochel. So if I'm going to have, could the Eibishter do a certain thing? Could he have chesed? Could he have gevurah? K'muvni. Because if not, then in the concept of chesed, it's not tali on him. It's not tzirichem leiv. Okay. Is lesikum. Let's just come back to how we began. We started off over here that we're going to explore two things. So das Shleimus und das Yechedes. Shleimus is the taich as for was hat der Eibishter alle Sachen, because the Eibishter is a Shalom. He has to have everything. Im Leata Machas Shleimus. Yechedes Atzmus is coming from a different direction. Is Mechuyev Metzias. Mechuyev Metzias can't be that there should be something that's not that kann das nicht tun. Now, that's the difference between Shleimus and Yechedes. What's the difference in the Eifan HaMetzias of Shleimus, of Chesed and Chochmah if we're going to say Shleimus? If we're going to say Chesed and Chochmah, if we're going to say Yechedes. Obvious. When you're going to say it in Shleimus, so each one is a separate word. Ich bin a Sholem. So I must have it. If you're saying Kil Yochel, it's not, he doesn't have the different things. It is Kil Yochel. Yecholti Lahar and Yecholti Shlei Lahar are not two different things. Kumta is that we're saying two different reasons why to have Gvul in Elikus. And Ebazeh, there's two different Ifani HaMetzias, wie the Gvul Zetos.
What's the set for Shlei? What's that for Shlei?
Einmal man weiß, Mechuyev Metzias, muss ich sagen, Shleimus mit Zad Pschittes. Also kann ich sein Murkev. Kann ich sein Murkev. Das ist eine zweite Sache. Aber es ist eine Teizoi von dem. Man schenken im Red Kil Yochel, das ist Kilo de Mechuyev Metzias allein. Lassen wir nicht sagen, wir können reden nach dem. Der Shleimus kommt, come on, soft, you can trace everything back. Aber das hat eine Teizoi. So now, wie zetois in Eskalus? At Kana we're just saying that there's two inyanim, Shleimus and Yechedes. Now to come back to our sugya, if I'm going to say that there's Nes in Teva, or Teva in Nes, mitzad ha-Shleimus, or if I'm going to say it's mitzad ha-Yechedes. Yeah, the Rebbe is bringing over here two inyanim. So back and forth. So one Pashat and Afkeminu will be as it. But what's the touch of Skalus? Skalus Bepashtus is, if you want Chesed to function properly, he has to have Gevurah. Oder Beloschen wie das ist in der Order da 55, real Bligvul has to have Gevul. You can't have a proper functioning Bligvul if you don't have Gevul. Tell us. I'm going to be mugbal. I'm not going to be able to come everywhere. So everything has to have from the other one to function properly. Ich kann nicht sein a gute Tate if I don't know how to take away a knife. It's a fallen chesed. So each one is going to borrow from the other. That's the pashtus in Inyan HaIskalos. Where does that come from? If both, what's the kayach for such a thing? It's at a shleimus. Sei chesed, sei gvuras, and a beide between from shleimus, are the commercial, ayadua, zwei sorim, was stehen far melech. So that Eise Shalom Memreimov, both of them, we come from the same place. So Memele chesed wird nehmen von gvur, and gvur wird nehmen von chesed. So why does chesed need gvura? Because I need to borrow from him to be mashla ma'ini. How could I? Because we both come from the same place. Aber dort haben wir fragen eine bessere Kasche. Not how. Why? How you talking that there is such a musik bichlal, as in order to be a good chesed, I need gvur. It's a krume mitzis. In order to be a proper functioning table, you have to be a bissel a chair. On the Indian is verkehrt for me. For me to be a proper me, I have to be not me. So what's the pshat? So auf dem steht, das nennt sich mitzad nefesh nezekeches. That's yichelis. Das nennt sich because a libe demes, all the keches are one. Mitzad hashleimus, each one is borrowing from the other, or finding the other, or using the other. Mitzad ha'atzmus, mitzad etzem ha'nefesh, all the keches are really one. And that's the reason why each keyach not only is taking from the other, the emes has the other and needs the other. So there's two questions over here. Why is this happening? Says chesed afam gvura in order to work. Why does chesed need gvura? Because be'etzem chesed is bepnimi is also gvura. Why is it bepnimi is also gvura? Because al libe de emes b'shorshe mitzad nefesh isekeches mitzad yicheles mitzad pshitas hanefesh, they are one. Das heißt also, mitzad shleimus, these are two things. Ich bin asholem defar hab ich chesed, ich bin asholem defar hab ich gvur. Mitzad yecheles, chesed und gvur sind doch eine Sache. Both of them is one kilyach. Memele, when chesed comes out and gvur comes out, each one of them has behel on the other. And those are the taich hitzi h mimayim mimayim yesh. This is beferish and echolzums in this cheshma. That you have to say that the reason I take from the other is because be'etzem b'shorshe I am one mitzad nefesh nesekeches. Kommt es azeh, lesikum. When I say skalulus, I'm going to say as chesed nem von gvur und gvur. Teva hat in sich nes und nes hat in sich teva. Why do I say it? So I could say two different mahalchim. The pashut reason is because jeder zach hat in sich eiche de andere zach. Just like he says, bli gvul, hasn't it also gvul? Like he describes over there in Tovshin Dalet. It says the etzem inyan ha'eir, the inyan ha'gilui needs tzimtzum in order to be gilui. If not, I mean, the matar of Gila is to ankumen ergitz. If the Rav is not going to have tzimtzum, he won't be able to be a proper Megal. Nishnor das, built into the Eifen Hagilui is already Kavanas HaTzimtzum. V'haraya, as the Eir is in the Eifen, that you could be Mitzamtzim it. Favosat Eir nish Megale alle Inyonim Sheba'atzmus, says as Aloshin. Because Mitzad alle Inyonim Sheba'atzmus, maybe they wouldn't be possible to be Mitzamtzim. So the fact that Rafael happens to look at Godla is because Ali B'Dem is the Eir Melechat Chilis Eifen Ha'is Pashtus is an Azar sort Eifen that was ever the plan for Tzimtzum. That's the way he works. So Al Kaponim via Zay Arbet the Eifen of his Kalulus because Ali B'Dem is Ich muss ankommen zu der Zweiter, und a liebe dem, ich habe ich der Zweiter. Why do I also have the other? That's mitzad yichelas atzmus. So if I'm going to ask you a pashta question, the poem Meisim B'chol Yem, I see a person doing his, has his galus, a tate nehmt avek a meser von a kis. What's at play over here? Is this coming mitzad shleimus or nefesh, is it coming mitzad yichelas? So obviously it's mitzad shleimus. Chesed feels that in order for me to work, I have to have gvura. I have to be careful of the other. Why he feels that? That's because alibe de emes, it's mitzad yichelas atzmus, which is what made bichlal that chesed needs gvura. So what's happening is shleimus. Why is that happening is mitzad yichelas. Cheshman is pashut. Ja? Und das ist da, was steht. The pnimius is mitzad yichelis. Where's the lashon over here? Siv zayin. Mitzad yichelis atzmus chesed Teva has nes and nes has Teva. But where Lepayil, we're talking over here in Shleimus. Lepayil, we're talking over here in a gewisse gilui of Teva, a gewisse gilui of Nes. So it's an eifin mitzad erchatzah Shleimusik. Bipnimius, it's the oizdruk, it's coming mikayach yechelis. This yisod is in the Rebbe's Torah Iberal, yeah, that everything be'etzem needs the other because it's really it's coming mitzad yechelis. We're just watching now in Yeshiva Purim Kotem and Vav. Middle sagt the Rebbe as a word from a cotton, the difference between cotton and gadol, as jeder dover cotton muss sein as in be'inin mesuyim is a gadol. It can't be that there should be one thing in the Bria which is not mashpia, was alle nivroim davon ankommen zu einem Linien sein. So there must be a hero from Purim Kotem. Favos ist das also? Because kol ma shebara HaKadosh Baruch Hu libro ele lechved. Jeder Inyan is giving its specific covenant. Heißt es, jeder Zach hat a gewisse Inyan that in that prat everything else needs him. Because really it's killed. There's a achdus in the whole bri. Okay, let's just be misakim over here. I think the question was, will the nefesh function in a way as skalus? There's kilo nema, an expression of that. This is a gilia atzmus. Und das ist der Wort von Leishanisi. This is what we're adding in Ara 43. In Chazakim kimi baram zeich mechuyev ha-metzias alein. Oder the Lashon is amitis ha-metzias wie the Lashon ha-aked. Eba zei, aber bleibt aber schwer. Es hat man gefunden in der Brie, nicht nur Nes shebe Teva, Teva shebe Nes, which is Sachakil, Bipnimi is coming from Yechelis Atzmus. Ma haben da, mamish, kilo a bitte von Atzmus, Leishanisi. Ich was der Meidl für Yemei Mashiach. So, L'chure darf man sagen als Sof, this Leishanisi is coming out in a certain eir. It's coming out in a eifen that is being megala Leishanisi. What's this eir? L'pail, it's Mikei Chasevif. Oder wie sagt, it's coming through the kaf. How is this Teva in a eifen, this Tzva Shomayim, Chazakim Kimi Baram, wie idos? Because it's Mikei Chasevif, and mitzad akav can haben in sich eiche dingen von Blikvul. It's an expression of Leishanis. Expression by definition is Sheni Shtatzmus. Sie kilo neymar schreit Leishanisi. Geh zogen Leishanisi. As soon as you're being megala Leishanisi, so it's kumov and it's still mitzad atzmus. Yeah, It's like al derech yad na'am bas gar nicht auf Beis. The emesse Inyan of Leishanisi cannot sein in Atzmus, but go forget that. Is trokt a Inyan which is in Letchila. Aber wenn sagt in Letchila, sagt das. So it's already coming, bepashtus. You see an expression of Leishanisi. If you look at the world, you can see it's impressive at the tzil Inyan from Leishanisi. As soon as you say that, so you've already brought into a certain air. Ebs a gewisse kav, das schon ageret. A kav that one of them is going to be Beis Gabrus. Is bedakus, I'm going to have the same word over here. This is going to be called Nes Shebeteva. Was ist das ist Teva? Wie der Rebbe's Loshne given, it's still mugbel lefi is lefi Eifen Teva. So you read the Meir Panf. It's the way the Inyan of Leishanisi is Araga kommen in a gewisse Ziel. Masha Enkin Anes. It beweist a full Balabatischkeit. So soft is going to be a chisaron, a built-in chisaron over here. The fact that he's expressing Leishanisi. Mesa Mashiach is a zweite Sache. A dritte Sache. Mesa Mashiach is a taich there's going to be Atzmus Alein. Over here we're going to be able to have, like in Yechelis, in the matzav of Yechelis, if I would be able to climb somehow or another into Etzem HaNefesh, into Kel Yochel Alein, is dorten Chesed und Gvura zwei Sachen, is Gvul und Blikvul zwei Sachen? Over there it's not just going to be as Yechelis is being Geirem that each one should also be Kelul the other. Dorten is the Taichis as a Takein Zach. Only in Yemesa Mashiach will ich treffen der Zach allein. Mitzad Kel Yoch. The beauty for this is Mokim or an Einem in Amida. Dorten steht das ist Gilei Atzmus Mamsh. Was ist das Mokim or an Einem in Amida? Es ist nicht der Taichi ist that es ist da etwas Amida and the any Mida is breaking it. Es ist ein Ness was brecht durch Teva. The Mida and the any Mida is in the selbe Ort. The din is as a Musa am Asayim v'chetzi Yorke. So if the any Mida is breaking it, so es wird am Asayim v'chetzi. So it has to be as the Mida and the any Mida is in the selbe Sache. Der Wort kann nur sein mitzad Atzmus. Mitzad Yechelis allein. Or with the Lashon is HaCheshech Atzmei Yoy. So all the different Ifanim that we're talking over here is ich nem Cheshech und ich lege rein der Erbaleichte Cheshech Zayib Temuf, it's using him Mikeach HaCheshech HaMegal, all the different Yon. HaCheshech Atzmei Yoy, it could only come from a place where Cheshech HaNeir is nicht zwei Sachen. Das ist Yemesa Mashiach, wo es ein Sach, Yechelis ist wie Nizgal.
It's not a bitui?
So Mokim und Arim in Amida, es steht, das ist Merfen, das ist die Sache allein, das ist Atzmus allein. That's the... V'haraya, one is not Beis Gabrus. It's a Pashta Cheshman. If you have to say that one is not Beis Gabrus, then that could only come mitzad Yechelis allein. Und das muss man sagen.
That's a Cheshman. A Cheshman is a bitui.
So, okay, so the kriegen in them guf, it's mechalik zan, okay? So you're going to be mechalik, but it's not the same thing as the Shanis. And it's for sure not the same thing as the Skalus, wo einen nennt von der Zweiter, and it's just Mikeach Atzmus. It's Lesiku. Lassen wir nur machen klar, what just happened over here. Wir haben da am Halich, that there's a Nes Shebeteva and there's a Teva Shebenes. Chazachim kimi baram is the Nes was da in Teva. The al derech ze is da in Nes is eiche da in von Teva was it nisam amulubashim mit Teva. So what we were struggling with is at the beginning we mishtalt avek, is this coming from Shleimus or is it coming from Yechelis? And in Havana it would mean a very different thing. Sachakel was man da heint zum Abend getan is as there's a difference between Shleimus and Yechelis. Alibidems. Shleimus means that everything I'm kailul, the inyan, ich trage der Sach because it has a certain value which if I don't have it I'm not shalom. Yechelis means from a totally different perspective. So it can't be that there should be something I can't do. The nafkamini is as David to zayin tzvei in yonim, and over here all the things are going to be one. You can't say this. Yicholti lo, yicholti shleiro. It's not two things. It's one thing. It's kil yochel. It's ein zach. In yechelis it's one. If it's two kavim, so even though mikayach hayechelis it's going to be mashpia that the two kavim are going to need each other, it's still going to be an even of shleimus. Bipnimius it's mitad yechelis. So there's going to be nes trok teva, teva trok nes, and one is beis gabrus, and we're never krich out of it. Then noch is da hechere zach, there's a bitui of mechuyev metzias alein, of leishanisi. Aber sof vals is a bitui, I'm still going to call it be'etzem teva. Elamai, it's the nes vidos in the welt von teva. Ma she'enkin as meret. Yemeisu Mashiach, this is in Tafshalam Tchet, that is Ibrahim. Whenever we come as the zwei Sachen, and we're not being mevater on either of them, in Pasach Eliyahu, what we're saying over here is, it's mitzat kil yochel, it was ein Zach, and that goof is being nizgale in Yemeisu Mashiach, and the fact, I'm going to be able to have alle Meiles, the Meile of Teva and the Meile of Nes, Arenu Niflo is in the Zalbot.